on this occasion are Io Johnson, an African affairs commentator and a regular contributor to the programme from London, and Ayub Muzey, who is an African political analyst, also from London, this time on the telephone. If I can begin with you, Io Johnson, how has Ethiopia's intervention changed the balance of power in Somalia?
Well, it has. As you know, Somalia has not had a functioning government for some time. Ethiopia actually came into the theme in 2006 when they came to support President Hussein and his government. And since then, it's actually destabilized Somalia seriously. We've had close to 1 million people being displaced, close to 17,000 people dying just this year alone, and a third of the nation of itself are in need of food aid. To give you some perspective, all the money that's gone into Somalia, nearly 70% has actually gone into corruption. So the government itself has not been a very good one in the interest of Somali people. And the Ethiopian government themselves, who are supported by the United States, have destabilized it further with their constant interference in that country. And of course, the insurgent, which has fueled and increased over the many years, have caused endless instability in that country, because they've been fighting for their freedom, fighting for their nation, and the Ethiopian troops have caused serious problems.
Thank you. Ayub Muzey, looking optimistically at the situation, what kind of a window of opportunity, diplomatically speaking, does the evacuation of Ethiopian troops present?
I think at the beginning I want to say that the Ethiopian troops, which are called the ENDF, that is the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, with great sense of responsibility, we can say that they have accomplished a certain step towards encouraging a necessary diplomatic effort from the African Union and the international community to play their proper role to assist in the realization of peace and stability in the country. So that is a major effort.
Well, let me pick you up on that. Let me pick you up on that, Mr. Muzey. You say that they've accomplished a great deal in that direction, but who asked them to intervene in the first place? I don't remember the African Union asking them to come in.
Now, I think when you look at this, there are some memos around whereby you could see that there has been some communication between different parties, but even on the same different parties, including the international community as well, whereby I think there was an arrangement whereby I think the Ethiopian government was promised that after a certain intervention for a period of time, there will be some support from the international community, and that encouraged them, even though the original position was Ethiopia for itself, as far as I understand, they wanted to go in the country because they thought that the stability in Somalia affected their own stability.
I see. Io Johnson, this is a bit of an old chestnut, isn't it? That when Soviet forces went into Afghanistan in 1980, they too said that President Najibullah had invited them there to bring about stability. This is exactly the argument that those people that want to justify their actions use, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. But the Soviet era of Somalia was a devastating one. A socialist policy which was adopted by the then President Barry. And of course, when he lost power in 1991, we saw endless anarchy which spilled, whereby different factions, different groups tried to take control of that land. And of course, back in 2000, we had the Islamic clerics who came in and created some level of stability. If it wasn't for them, Somalia...
Johnson, with great respect to what you're saying, please address yourself to this point, if you would. Is there any justification that Ethiopia can use, any justification of restoring stability for having come into Somalia without seemingly the overall invitation of the Somali people?
No, you can't. There's no justification. They formed a relationship with the United States on the pretense of supporting the then government who were actually in Kenya at the time. And when they came into Somalia, the Somalian people did not embrace them. That is the problem. They did not embrace their intervention. They did not embrace the style in which they came in. And of course, what we've seen thus far has been the fact that the intervention by the United States and the Ethiopian troops have caused total chaos and anarchy on that soil. And their to blame squarely for some of the disgruntlement and dissatisfaction that we see among the Somali people, who themselves have faced some of the most atrocious crimes that have been caused by this war.
All right,
so I think.
All right, thank you for the moment. Back to you, Mr. Muzey, and back to that question of whether the evacuation by Ethiopia's troops presents a window of opportunity, diplomatically speaking. Do you think that that window is now open? And how long will it remain open, do you think?
Yeah, from my point of view, I look at this from this way, that first of all, it is the Ethiopian forces, even though they deny it now, that they were actually supporting the president who has just left Mr. Yusuf Abdullah, who has just left, who everybody, including IGAD, who supported his appointment, they say it was an obstacle to peace. So the departure of the Ethiopian forces meant the departure of Abdullah Yusuf, and also it meant that actually there are other forces, including the Al-Shabaab people, who the Ethiopian community, the Ethiopian people themselves on the ground, they think that these people, for whatever reason, they are partners to peace, but they think that with the withdrawal of the Ethiopian forces, it will be possible to reach out to these other parties that were ignored during that time. So I think there is now a window of peace.
I see. Look, Mr. Muzey, the transitional federal government has been there since November 2004. And in anyone's language, transitional means taking a step towards something permanent. How long can it justify its own position as the legitimate government of Somalia, given that it was supposed to be there as a transitional government?
Now, I think the word transitional government is the wrong word. To be honest, on that particular point, I could say these people failed on three fronts. The first front was that they failed to hammer out a working relationship amongst themselves. They also failed. There was also an issue of the role of external input. There was so many external input that was not in Somalia's interest. At the same time, I could also say that they failed as well to reach out to other parties that had a stake in what was happening. If I could quote one of the ministers of Ethiopia, Minister Seyum, he said, what is embedding the peace process in Somalia is lack of political commitment, of political will, and responsibility from the leadership of the TFG institution, which has remained locked in feuds over tribalities, self-aggrandizement, and nepotism.
Yes. Now, Mr. Johnson?
Yes, I mean, to be honest with you, I would tend to agree on some aspects of that. But I think the most important thing that have actually caused Somalia to be in the position it is has been the interference from outside elements. Somalians themselves have not been allowed to solve their own problems. And of course, with Ethiopia leading now...
Can you expand on that? Who do you have in mind in particular?
When you say who, what do you mean? What are you talking about?
Well, you say that outsiders have interfered in Somali affairs. Can you be more specific as to who and when?
Well, more so we had interference more so recently by Ethiopia, and we've also had interference from the United States, who are flagging that war, and also we've had the Eritrean who have actually been supporting some of the groups in Somalia. But I think we need to take a breathe and stand back and actually look at it from this perspective. Now you have Ethiopia who is about to leave. More than likely we will have a vacuum. We've got the United Nations who are clearly saying that they want a Baghdad-style green zone, whereby there may be a safety net, whereby the allies may be able to stay there. But that will create even further anarchy and further resentment, and we may have bombings. And so it's all a very messy picture, because really Somalia deserves far more than is being given at the moment. And the the AU troops that are there, the mandate by which they have been allowed to operate is not one of enforcement, but one of protecting the people. So they can't actually compete on an even footing with the insurgents. And I can see in a few weeks' time, if not careful, the entire country will be engulfed by the Al-Shabaab and even the Islamic State themselves.